Here we
We
are.
are.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Heart to Heart, a program which aims to help you understand and to become your loving self. At KMET 1490 AM ABC News Live, Video Live. I'm Dr. Mitra Rashidian. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, certified sexologist in full-time private practice. And I know that there is some echo going on, so my apology for that. Oh, okay, it went away. That's good. So, as part of what I do, in addition to clinical work at private practice, I also do research about human sexuality and sexual healthcare, which includes pretty much all aspects of our, sexual life and sexuality in general. And I'm here today with Dr. Robert Jaffe, who happens to be my mentor for life. Uh,
Yes, I
uh,
met her when she was 2 days old.
right? And then, I mean, you're gonna be my mentor, Shona. You have been, and you're
Okay.
that's my honor, to have you as my mentor.
Well, thank you.
Sure, and a best friend that anybody in their life, a supportive person, somebody that you can truly trust, and also it's so delightful to share this program with him and with you together. And he's also a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified hypnotherapist. And he will further introduce himself. And why we're here is to help you to overcome any matters that's about your sexuality impacting your relationship. This is our first hour. And the second hour at 4 o'clock, we talk about trauma, addictions, codependency, impacting relationships. So between the two of us, combine about what plus 60, 80, 80, 75 years of experience, clinical experience. We are offering you the four core areas of challenges that people, for the most part, have been experiencing, and we hope that by you listening to these programs, we can make it easier on you in any aspect that you're struggling with or you have concerns about. And we want to thank you for joining us. And we know you have many choices to choose from. And we are honored that you have chosen our program and to be with us for the next 2 hours. Our phone number here live is 951-922-3532. We understand that it may be difficult for you to join us live and share your private concerns. Therefore, we are inviting you to contact us via our private email and phone numbers, which are listed at KMET webpage, and our Facebook over there. And you can contact us in any form that's comfortable for you. So, Dr. Jaffe, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And welcome to all our listeners and viewers. I hope there's listeners and viewers listening because we haven't gotten any feedback since we've been doing this from our listeners, and so we're not sure how many people or who is listening and what effect we're having. So we would love to get some feedback from you. It would be really nice, and we'd be very appreciative. Even if you just called in to say hi, I've been listening, and I like what you're saying, or hi, I've been listening, and I have some thoughts about some of the things you've been saying. Whatever, we would love to hear from you, and it would be very affirming for us. So I hope that this program is of value. We talk about a lot of things in this program about what it's like to be fully human. We talk about our loving, authentic, true selves, which is what we, for the most part, most of us are born into the world as our loving, authentic, true selves. What that means is that we have a lot of positive qualities. And one of the positive qualities that we come in with is honesty. And to the extent that it's safe for us to be honest, we like being honest. We don't like lying. Therefore, because there are so many people who do lie and who are so dishonest, To me, that means that they have been treated in a way that has told them that honesty is not the best policy. It's better to lie because when you're honest, you get in trouble. And so I want to let everybody know that we, we are here not just to survive, we're also here to thrive. And if we want to thrive, we need to learn how to connect with our loving, authentic, true selves and be that around safe people. And so we have to know who's safe in the world to be ourselves with. And the people who aren't safe to be around, we need to recognize that as well, so that we can, for the most part, be only around the people who are safe, and the people who are not safe, if we're forced to be around them, we can recognize it and then take good care of ourselves by not engaging with them in too deep a manner, because if we do, those people are people who will take advantage of us.
And this is such an important factor that you just mentioned, and I like the fact, looking at the thriving versus surviving. I like the topic of how we need to look into how to take care of ourselves. And as part of that, I see that, fear is a factor here.
Fear is a big factor.
Fear is a big factor here. And I had a, talk earlier today with a dear colleague of mine, and we actually had a very good discussion about this. And I'm thinking that in a set of topic that I had in mind, maybe we can open up that one. What do you think?
Absolutely.
And it is about relationship. It is about how to feel safe within relationship. It is about recognizing, our authentic, loving, true self, which is essentially is a part of us that we are born with, and we always say that we are born into this world as our authentic, true self, which is open, calm, curious, emotionally available, connected, honest, confident, compassionate, sexual, and trusting. Now, so what happens that while we are born with all these qualities, and they are just, the gifts that, we are given right beforehand, before we even come to this world, we all have all of that, instilled in us. It is part of who we are. It is part of our soul. It is part of our authenticity. And then when we are here, we lose touch with those wonderful, amazing gifts. And then we're wondering that, how this is happening, that we forget about all those aspects of ourselves. And those are the aspects that they are missing in our relationships, because if we don't have them, if we are, not that we don't have them, if we are not able to be in touch with that part of ourselves, obviously we're not going to be able to share that with our partners in our relationship. And one of the reasons that we don't do that is because we don't have the practice of knowing ourselves in that way, in a compassionate way, in a loving way, in a confident way, we don't know what is the balance here between emotions and feelings, and what's external and what is internal, and how external factors, basically impacts us internally, and how we lose that balance of, our authenticity, and we form into something that's truly is not us, it's not genuine. So having a life under, a false self definitely, impacts our relationship in variety of ways. And one of them, to say the least, is our sexuality, our sexual relationship. So, I think what you introduced, took me back to that conversation this morning. And there are many factors that, and I see that also in our clients. I see it in our clients that when they come here and they have problem with their sexual life, and they don't know where to look for answer, they don't know what to look for an answer. It is like they are in this lost confusing dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
That first of all, it's such a fearful dynamic because they don't know if there is a way out of it, right? They don't know if there is an outlet that they can look for to find, an outlet to that thriving part of their life that they want to have, that they want to achieve. Because uh, life is not just about survival; it's about enjoyment. And many of the people that at least I meet here in my practice, they think as long as they can survive, as long as they can make the day go by and go home at night safely, that's life. So what they essentially are losing the most, and what is the most valuable thing that they lose is the enjoyment part of life,
Mm-hmm.
the compassionate part of life, the connectedness that they don't experience.
Mm-hmm.
And when we investigate that, when we explore that, when we become aware of it, we see that the part that's really missing, okay, is fear of being who they are, because they don't have the practice of it. They have become what the society wanted them to be, what the parents wanted them to be. And we have talked about these things, in different format. We have talked about attachment theory and all of that. But I think, we can today talk more about it at a common social, everyday kind of a life situation, so that we can maybe you and I make sense out of it. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a client that I see, a woman that grew up in a very well, I'm going to use the slang word, right? Dysfunctional,
Mm-hmm.
a dysfunctional family, meaning that the parents were very emotionally immature. She did not get beaten, and she did not get sexually abused. What she did get was a mother who actually had been sexually abused, and the mother um, transferred all of her negative energy into her body. So the mother was always
I mean, the
complaining,
mom's
the mom's
body.
body.
The mom's body.
Yeah, so the mother was always complaining about her body and running to doctors. And the father co signed that. So the mother took up most of the space in the home. And my client felt as if her feelings and her thoughts didn't matter. And for the most part, they didn't in that situation. And so she felt as though she were invisible. And so she grew up believing that she needed to be invisible, because anytime that she started to talk about herself, she would get reminded not in an unkind way that her problems were nothing compared to her mother's problems. She would get reminded of that by the mother and the father. So she started to believe that the only safe place was for her to be invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And she grew up wanting to be invisible. She was very bright, so she began to learn how to earn money, and she was pretty good at earning money. But she worked sort of all by herself. She worked for a company, but it didn't involve having to collaborate much. And and she got into a relationship with a man, and then decided she needed to be invisible in the relationship. And the man was very upset with her because he said, "Where are you? I can't feel your energy. I can't feel where you are emotionally." And she didn't have an answer for him.
Well, let's see if we can find an answer for that right after our commercial break.
Sounds good.
Because we just got that notice, and we look forward to see you back in a Welcome back from our commercial break. This is Heart to Heart program at KMET 1490 AM, ABC News Radio Live. For those of you who are just joining us, we're talking about an aspects of human sexuality today. which basically we are referring to our lost authentic true self. Across the years, we tend to not recognize that, therefore, we lose we lose the practice of how to be who we essentially are, which we are, all that beautiful qualities of life. And we get to forget about that. We put it aside because we just have to fit in society, without realizing that when we are unhappy in our romantic relationships, in any relationships, in our sexual relationships, a major part of it has to do with, forgetting that aspect of us, that beautiful part of us, our authentic true self. So Dr. Jaffe and myself, we were talking about this before the break, and he had an example of one of his patients. So let's hear about that.
So just to refresh everybody's memory, this is a woman who grew up in a family where the mother had been sexually abused when she was younger, and all of that negative energy went to concerns about her body. And so she was always worried about her body, she was always talking about her body, and she was always running to doctors about her body. The doctors could never really find anything wrong, but that didn't dissuade her because she was carrying a lot of unresolved pain from the sexual abuse. And we now know that unresolved pain from any abuse, whether it's sexual or whether it's physical or whether it's emotional, could be religious abuse, spiritual abuse. That's not uncommon. And spiritual abuse can be very damaging because it sort of turns God into the enemy. God is going to be a vengeful thing, and unless you do what God wants you to do, God is going to take revenge on you. That's an abusive stance, because then the person can no longer have faith in God, because God is going to be vengeful. But going back to this particular woman, so her mother had all of these negative things happen to her when she was younger. And we know that when we carry painful energy, it goes into one of three areas within ourselves. One can be into our physical body, where we start to have aches and pains we get headaches, we get stomach aches, back aches. It also can actually lower our immune system, where we can actually come down with different diseases that are real, because the negative energy actually affects our bodies. The second place that the negative energy goes is into projection onto those close to us. So we find things wrong with them, and we become very critical and hyper aware of anything that they're doing, which we see as insults or attacks on us. And so we become very distant from the people around us, because we're projecting on them all this negative energy. And the third way is in self-sabotage, where we do things to hurt ourselves, and we don't understand why. A very simple example is losing our keys all the time. Now, if you lose your keys once or twice, that doesn't mean that you're doing that you have this negative energy and you're using it to hurt yourself. But if it becomes habitual, where you don't do things that, and as a result, you have negative consequences in the world, and that becomes something that's habitual, you can probably guess, sort of like footprints in the sand. If you see footprints in the sand, you can assume that somebody's been there. And here you can assume that if you're doing things and you are sabotaging yourself, you don't come off well on interviews, you say negative things about yourself, you get there late, things like that. That's often emotional pain that you're carrying that hasn't been acknowledged and dealt with properly. So my client then grew up in this home where the wife, her mother, had all of these negative problems. I'm going to use the word problems in quotes, with her body. She took up a lot of space in the house, talking about it, feeling about it, complaining about it, her husband backed her up. And so my client then became in the background, and my client, any problems that she had growing up with schoolmates or with schoolwork or anything like that, was pretty much put on the back burner and ignored.
Yeah, she probably, had to connect to other people differently because mom's situation, thinking and talking and sharing and focusing all about perhaps her diet, her way of life, what to eat, what not to eat. So it just become, yeah, that becomes giant.
And so my client felt like she didn't matter.
Yeah.
And she felt like if she did get noticed, it was usually in a critical way. So she decided she needed to be invisible, and grew up, and now is in this relationship where her husband is very upset with her because her husband says you're not there. And so my client is able to be sexual at times, but often doesn't even want to do that. But mostly the client is not there emotionally, and so her husband is very distraught and doesn't know what to do. He does love her, but and wants to connect with her emotionally, and she can be there if he's suffering, because she's learned how to do that because she was there to help the mother when the mother was suffering, but she can't talk about herself and disclose anything about herself. So it's very problematic in the relationship.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And actually, this takes me to, I had a meeting yesterday, which it was about a couple that the woman pretty much has the same story. Mm-hmm. It was a different couple. And another colleague was presenting that. So I expressed my clinical, observations and perspective about how I would, proceed to understand this woman, in her relationship. And because she's also unable to express herself sexually or to even engage herself in a sexual, activities, and pretty much she's fine without sex. Not that she's asexual, but she just feels fine and safer without having sex. Mm-hmm. So my approach was to look at the how she learned about love and affection in her family of origin, how much safe she felt within her family, how much she was able to, express herself, or what kind of a conversation they had about love and affection within the family, what are her perceptions and beliefs and learning and education and thoughts and feelings all around, herself, her authentic true self, and how does she, then she within that context can, understand herself. So basically help her to go back to the earlier time in her life. Mm-hmm. And look at any possible trauma, look at any incident, any negative messages, because obviously in my professional opinion and experience and all of that, I have learned that there are situations that take place, messages we receive, interpretations of those messages that we make, that makes us to become the sexual adult or a partners in life that we become in adulthood. Mm-hmm. And it was to my surprise, and I was kind of taken by that, actually, and I felt like, okay, I'm gonna have to really search on this to see where am what did I lose here, right? What did I didn't connect with here? But I was told that while all that information are valuable, they're not needed, and the need is to focus on playfulness. Mm-hmm. So my question was that if we become playful without understanding what doesn't allow us to be playful, what kind of a playfulness is that going to be? Mm-hmm. And I didn't get an answer to my question.
And the question again was what?
The question, I didn't get an answer, to why my approach was wrong. Mm. why learning about how somebody's belief about sexuality, somebody's perception about sexuality, somebody's attitude and thoughts and feelings about sexuality shapes, which you and I know per research and clinical experiences and education, all these concepts shape way early in life, and then they apply themselves at different aspects of life, in particular romantic relationship. If we don't know about that, so that we can change them from that fundamental part, and then if we can't change them, how can we engage somebody to become a sexual person and go through playfulness?
Mm.
And I didn't get an answer as to why my approach being valuable, but not necessary, not important, and we don't want to do that anymore. So can you give me some insight about that? Do you have any insight about that? Because right now, even you're giving me an example about your client that her earlier life experiences made her to believe this way about herself,
Right.
which is now impacting her relationship with her spouse. And I can swear that every couple that I have seen having similar issues, they had earlier sort of a major trauma or a small t trauma, which we have talked about them before, whether there has been something an intense trauma, or it has been something that was pervasive type of trauma ongoing in their life. Like, for example, your example of this woman living in a life that her mom was consuming all the attentions, that's a pervasive trauma. Right. So and you and I know that we need to go back to fix this situation that's happening today. So in your opinion, how would just focusing on how to make one playful is going to help?
Well,
I mean, for me, that's a kind of
yeah. What we do is we look for blockers. Right. So what we say at the beginning of every program, which you said today, is we come into the world as our loving, authentic, true selves, and we come on with all of these wonderful qualities. And one of the qualities, which you didn't mention because we haven't actually talked about it much, is playfulness. We learn through play, and that's the way children learn. Right. So I watch my 3-year-old granddaughters playing a lot, and they learn from playing. What is interesting to them, and they play with dolls, they play with toy ovens, they play with.
Play is experience.
Play is experience. It's experience. So my thought is if somebody isn't able to be playful, then there has to be some blocker to that. Right. And so what was it or what is it in this person's life that has taken over this person's attention that feels so serious to them?
Right. Sometimes what's taken in this person's life is not so obvious. It's not as easy as, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, we got it, so let's work on that.
Correct.
It's something much deeper. It's subconscious. Sometimes it is much deeper. It is unconscious part of a person. Unconscious part of a person. Thank you. Which is totally out of touch.
Correct.
For all of us.
Correct.
And if you're not able to recognize that and just invite person to be playful, that's a temporary relief. And I'm not sure. I haven't seen it to be effective.
Well, no, it's not. I mean, it's effective temporarily.
Yeah.
And people often take that route to want the quick fix because it does give them some relief. And that's what we talk about a lot with addictions. Why do people get addicted to drugs and alcohol? Why do people get addicted to sex? Why do people get addicted to gambling? Because it takes them out of out of the state that feels so heavy to them. And so the addiction then works in terms of giving them some relief from whatever it is. Relief is not release. So even though people get relief, they're not released from it, so that after the relief is experienced, they go back to being the way they were. And so unless they can continuously use whatever substance or whatever method that they have used to get that relief, which life isn't set up that way. You can't be gambling all the time, because you most of the time you're going to run out of money.
Right.
You can't be sexual all the time because you have to go to work and make some money. You can't be using drugs and alcohol all the time because you won't be able to survive in the world. Nobody will give you a place to stay. So life will force us to not use our defenses or our addictions exclusively, and as a result, we won't be able to get release from whatever it is that pain is there.
Okay. Well, let's talk more about this. I'm excited about what we have started to talk about. Hopefully, you have the same interest in what we're discussing. So we see you shortly, right after this commercial break. Thank you.
Ultimately, this person doesn't. It isn't that they don't know how. The knowing how, it's sort of like when people ask you, you're a sex therapist, you teach people how to have sex, right? It's not that people don't know how. It's that people get things that get in their way of
Right.
feeling free and uninhibited to be their authentic true selves. So with this particular person, that was the case.
Yes, and I have a couple like that the husband actually blames his absolutely gorgeous, knockout, beautiful young wife
Mm-hmm.
to be the problem because he doesn't want to focus on sex and sexuality,
Mm-hmm.
and he has major issues with his own part. Not that he has any of the dysfunctions, sexual dysfunctions, but emotionally he is unable to connect, right? But then again, like you give us the example of where negative emotion goes, and they go to three places.
Right.
So one of the negative places that he sends his negative emotions is a direct negative projection on his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one is self-sabotage by eating.
Ah.
Eating, that the way it's not healthy for him.
Right.
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 So when we okay.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, wonderful.
Hi,
Thank you.
hi,
Hi,
Suzanne.
Susan.
Hi. Yeah.
Hello.
Can
Suzanne,
you
are
hear
you
me?
there?
Yes, I'm here. Are you here?
Yes,
Yes.
we're
Hello?
here. Hi.
Okay. Yeah. Hello. I
Hi.
was I
Welcome.
was trying to call in, but I guess I didn't hear the number too often. But I happened to have the number for KMET, so I caught you that way. But I appreciate what you've been saying. It's very interesting. I wanted to talk about something that is a concern of mine with friends and family, and just in general, if that's okay. And
Of course.
Absolutely. Sure.
yeah, I just think that that a lot of the Facebook and Instagram fosters so much self-absorption and narcissism, and to the point where it just seems so excessive that everybody, all they want to do is talk about themselves and what they're doing and where they're going, and instead of really reaching out and being concerned for others, they're so into themselves, and it just bothers me. That's all. And they don't. It's so myopic that they don't go into other. There's not a balance. There's not a balance of themselves along with other issues that are going on, maybe politically, or I don't know. I just think it's too excessive.
Mm-hmm.
right. You are
And are you wanting feedback on what you're saying? Are you wanting our opinion, or what would you like from us?
Well, I have a couple friends that and family that I just feel I want to say something to them about. It's hurtful that they're so into themselves that they don't reach out with concern to to find out how things are going.
Okay. And do you do that? Do you like participate and reach out with concern in the way that
Oh,
you're wanting them
definitely,
to?
definitely.
You
Uh,
do. Okay.
well,
Yeah.
I just when somebody posts 50 pictures of themselves and what they're doing daily, day in and day out, and they don't reach out to others. I just I want to say something, but I think I tried that once and it didn't go well. So
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that, Susanna, because I think that is, yes, that can become too much, and at points it can become aggravating. Dr. Jaffe, you were gonna
Well,
answer to this.
what I was gonna say is, everybody is at their own place of development emotionally. And
right.
so when we tell other people where we are, and we may be in a different place, we may be in a more advanced place about about our own emotional development in comparison to where other people are. Um, Other people aren't going to generally have a good reaction because they're going to feel put down. So
They may not even understand it.
and yeah, they may not understand, but I think they're going to feel put down. And I think the best way really to handle it is simply by leading in the way that you believe is most beneficial for yourself and for other people. Other people I mean, many people are emotionally young, shall I say. Many
Uh-huh.
people are emotionally stuck at younger ages, and so they use the social media as a way of demonstrating where they are emotionally. Some people can be as young as 2 years old, as 5 years old, as 10 years old, and that has nothing to do with their level of intelligence. It just has to do with their emotional development. Um, so it so it's I think it's valuable to recognize that if the person is not where you are emotionally, that the best way of handling it is simply to demonstrate to them and to talk about what matters to you, not what they should or shouldn't do.
Exactly. Yes. Do you think that? I think that's something that very valuable that for you to understand and recognize where you are, and value that, and then just demonstrate that the same way they're demonstrating where they are, as you, Dr. Jaffe, called it, the emotionally, developed, and then you can also show that for yourself, and that difference over time is going to show itself, and then people will learn from you that how they need to actually maybe follow your lead instead, because that looks so much wiser, so much more impactful, and so much more authentic.
Yeah, and then the other thing I was just thinking and I wanted to suggest is uh, being judgmental um, shuts people down.
Right.
So whenever we judge other people or whenever other people are judging us, we close off or they close off, depending on who's doing the judging. The other way of dealing with it is simply to become curious and to say, well, what do you get from it? What do you get from posting all these pictures of yourself? What's that like for you? And then when they tell you not to judge what they're saying, but just to try to understand them, and the more that people feel understood, the more they feel open, and then you can begin to talk more about where you're at, and they may be able to learn from that because you've asked them where they are first and haven't judged them for where they are. And we do this in therapy as well. A lot of people come in, they're very bright, and sometimes very successful in the world, but emotionally they're injured or they're at a much younger age. And so we try and help them by asking them about themselves and about what happened to them and about why they feel what they feel. And as they feel safe to talk about those things, then we say, okay, well, here's what I've learned, or here's the way that I handle it. And I'm not saying that you should handle it the same way as I handle it, but this is what I've learned.
And the other thing is that, life on social media, has its own norm. And many people believe that the more they post, the more they talk, the more they show themselves, the better it is, because they look at other people that they have like a million people of followers, or so many other, the way they interact, and they believe among themselves that that's the right way. So they're not necessarily want to do that, but they think that they have to copy other styles. And the more they show up, the more they're going to be acknowledged, which is, we know today that we don't need to be on so many, platform of social medias. We don't need to do that. But people have, decided that that's the direction for them. And actually, in some parts we see a decline. So that's a good news, because we see that people are realizing and recognizing that doing it the way they have been doing it, like you describe, these people, they're recognizing that that's not actually taking them to the destination that they hope they would get to by posting so much about themselves. So I
Well,
think,
everybody works.
I hope that these answers are helpful to you.
Yeah, what do you think,
Yeah.
Suzanne?
Well, I appreciate that and the input. I do. But I was at a restaurant and I saw four gals. They looked in their high school, and they were all sitting at a table and they were all looking at their phones. And then
I
one would
know.
go, and then
I
one would go to
know.
the restroom, and they would come back, and they did not. In the time I was watching them, maybe I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, they never spoke to each other. So when I left, I know you said not to judge, but anyway, I said, well, you girls should just really go to lunch with your phones. And
Yeah,
they all
yeah,
looked
I
yeah,
at
yeah,
have to
yeah.
share my story. I was at this family gathering, and I saw a few of my family members and in-laws and everybody. They were all sitting, but like you said, they were all busy with their iPhones. And finally, I said, could you please tell me exactly where you are, so at least that way I can join you?
I, I,
I know. It's a whole different generational thing, and I look at it and I kind of scratch my head as well, Suzanne. So I'm with you. It's
yeah,
also kind of it is very narcissistic. It's all about me,
yeah.
and yeah,
It's annoying. Really annoying.
it can be annoying to those of
Yeah.
us who've learned that there's other people in the world besides us.
Yeah,
And we know how to communicate, right?
right. Well, it's just to me, it cripples conversation and
Yes.
It
interaction,
does.
and you're not developing social skills because you're just glued to your phone. And in some instances, some people even have been killed walking across the street looking at their phone or falling off a
Oh
cliff.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, and so I
and
mean,
people are killed all the time driving and playing and looking at the phone.
oh, it's
Yeah.
terrible.
I
In
know, I know.
California, it's rampant with people looking at their phones. I pass them and because there was driving squirrely, and every time they're looking at their phones, it's so dangerous. But anyway, I'll let you go. So I
Well,
appreciate
You
your
know what? You know what? I want to
suggestions.
tell you something. You're our first caller. We've been doing this a long time, and I am so happy that you called in. I'd like to
yes.
give you a big hug and kiss. So thank you,
Thank
thank you,
you.
thank you. I know that
Well,
there
you're
is somebody
welcome.
listening.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much for
Suzanne.
your help.
Thank you,
Thank
Suzanne.
you.
Thank you. Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Bye-bye.
Take
God
care.
bless you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, okay, we thank you, Susanna, who joined us and asked us, shared with us, her perspective about engagement on social media, and that's another, important area that we disconnect with each other. We truly disconnect with our authenticity, we disconnect with, communicating authentically with other people. And there is so much to say, and we don't need to spend, our time the way that she described it, on social medias. And unfortunately, that aspect of life is becoming very, it has become very dominating and has taken many of our actual, true, authentic social skills away from us. So we thank you, Susanna, for joining us, and we look forward to hearing back from you again. And Dr. Jaffe, our time is up, and I would like to invite everybody to join us at the hour 4 o'clock for another episode of codependency, trauma, addictions, and relationship with Dr. Jaffe and myself. And I would like to invite you next week to join us at Thursday at 3 p.m. for human sexuality. And until then, don't forget that all you need is love.
All you need is love. We'll talk to you soon.
Soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This is 1490 AM KMET, Banning, Beaumont, Redlands, and Palm Springs. News, talk, sports.
From ABC News, I'm Daria Albinger. You may not have been paid to get the COVID